Hi, hey, hello, and welcome to another episode of a Colts podcast. My name's Brandon, and I'm joined here by your co-host, my best friend, Andrew Moore. Big day.
Huge day.
Big news. The moment we've been maybe not waiting for. Carson Wentz, Andrew, has been traded. But before we get into it, let's chat. How are you doing? How's your week been? We were planning on recording tomorrow, and then this happened. So, rain on my parade. What's up?
It's been a busy week, to say the least. Things are ramping up in the NFL world, especially with all the quarterbacks going on. We have Aaron Rodgers news, Russell Wilson news, and then tonight with the huge bomb in Colts world where Carson Wentz is traded to the Washington Commanders. And we've been talking about this. This is something that I said back after Chris Ballard had his press conference. I said it doesn't seem like Carson Wentz will be back next year. This is the same thing that happens every year. You just got to listen to what Chris Ballard says, and usually you'll find what the Colts are thinking. And sure enough, the Carson Wentz experience in Indianapolis, one and done. So Colts are at a crossroads at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I guess what is today? The 9th? It came a little earlier than I expected, I suppose, but we got a little more out of him than we expected as well. So we're going to dig into that. So Carson Wentz has been traded to the Washington Commanders, along with a 2022 second round pick, the 47th overall, for the Washington Commanders 2022 second round pick, 42 overall. So we move up 5 spots there. We get a 2022 third round pick, 73rd overall, 2023 third round pick. That can become a second round pick if Wentz plays 70% of the snaps in 2022, kind of similar to what we did with them. And the Commanders will take on all of Wentz's 2022 salary, freeing up around $28 million in cap space for the Colts.
A lot of information there. So let's start out with what they got. So basically, and really the Colts got more than I thought they were going to get for Carson Wentz. I thought maybe the Colts could recoup a third round pick, and I would have been fine with that. But no, they got multiple third round picks, and they were able to move up 5 spots this year in the 2022 draft. So I think that the Colts really, as far as trying to recoup as much as possible, I think the Colts did a really good job. It was reported earlier in the week that the Washington Commanders had offered a 4th round pick and a 6th round pick to the Colts for Carson Wentz. And then when Russell Wilson and everything that happened yesterday, when he got traded to the Broncos, he's off the market. Then things started to ramp up, and Ballard's asking price went up a little bit higher, and the Commanders were able to meet it. So I think, obviously, it's still a stain on this regime for giving up a 1st round pick and a 3rd round pick and only having Carson Wentz for 1 year. Don't
Right.
get this wrong. It was still at the time, and I want to say at the time because we thought it at the time too. Thought it was a great trade. Thought that Carson Wentz probably was going to work out. Didn't happen. Turns out to be a very bad trade, and that's definitely going to stick with the Colts. But I think they did a good job of recouping as much as they could, and they certainly got more than I thought they would.
Yeah, they absolutely got more than neither one of us thought they could. Definitely didn't expect a 1st rounder to come.
No.
People talking about a 1st rounder are just out of their mind. Just because of what happened this year. And honestly, I don't hate Carson Wentz. I still don't look back and say getting Carson Wentz was a bad move. I don't love just the value of the trade now. Like now that we've already dumped him, it doesn't look great. In regards to that, like you mentioned with the regime, but I still don't think getting Carson Wentz was a bad idea. And as bad as the loss of picks and everything is, and dumping him after a year, we did come back and get as much as we could for him. Which at the end of the year, you and I were both saying, I don't think anybody's going to trade for Carson Wentz.
Well,
Things
and
change. So
yeah, and the thing about it is hindsight's always 2020. So, like
yeah,
we said at the time, last year, Carson Wentz was the best option for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts didn't know how the draft was going to work out, and you really can't rely on that either. So, you can't say that the Colts could have just saved up their capital and tried to trade up for Justin Fields. They didn't know that was going to happen. So, I don't fault the Colts for making the trade, but how the trade ended up and the results from it definitely is a stain. But here's one thing that makes that stain a little less prevalent is that the Commanders are taking on all $28.3 million of Carson Wentz's salary.
yeah,
That's huge for the Indianapolis Colts. That takes them up to, I think, $72 million in cap space here for the start of free agency, which is literally less than a week away. The most cap space in the NFL. The Colts are going to have plenty of money to make moves. They're going to be able to extend their own. Quentin Nelson
yeah.
comes to mind. They're going to be able to make plays for bigger free agents, something that I think that the Colts and Chris Ballard specifically might change up their approach a little bit because they have been so prudent and it hasn't necessarily led to the results. You could see them go out and spend money on a wide receiver, or I think what's more likely to happen is they spend money on a pass rusher to really help the
Yeah.
edge group and really try to get after the quarterback. So again, I don't think they're going to go crazy with their money, and I don't think they're going to
They're not going
spend
to have a year like the Pats had last year.
right. They're not going to spend everything and just go wild, but I think you will see them in the battle for more top free agents, like a
Yeah,
top edge rusher or maybe a bigger name wide receiver that can really help this
sure.
offense on the outside. But yeah, that's huge because at first if the Colts would have just released him outright, they would have still had to eat that $15 million. And even with a trade, we thought that there could be a big chance that the Colts would have to help pay for some of Carson Wentz's salary. And that's
Yeah.
just not the case. The Commanders are taking on his entire salary, and that's a huge win. I think that might be one of the biggest wins for the Indianapolis Colts in this trade.
Yeah, that was the biggest win for sure. I feel like that right there, we almost would have given him up, said, you know what, if you'll take the whole salary, we're willing to just let you have him. And we got a lot more out of it than that. So I'm not too upset about that. Andrew, we all saw the season. We all saw the press conference with Ballard and Reich. We all know what Jim Irsay said. But what do you think actually led up to this point of it actually happening? Or what do you think the accumulation of events was to cause this to be, just a one and done situation, not viable to continue that relationship?
So this is kind of a combination of what we're hearing here at Sports Illustrated off of Zach Kiefer of The Athletic, his report today after Carson Wentz was traded. But I think we'll start out with I think one of the biggest reasons is that he just didn't step up to the plate like the Colts wanted him to. They wanted him to be able to take over games, and they wanted to be able to rely on him when it mattered most, especially down the stretch. And you look at that stretch between maybe weeks 4 and weeks 15 or 16, and Carson Wentz played some pretty good ball, but it was the games against the New England Patriots that were really, really bad. Colts still got the win, but Carson Wentz had 57 yards. He was really bad in that game. How he didn't lift the team against the Raiders and then against Jacksonville. Now, again, this wasn't all on Carson Wentz, and the Colts are putting all of this on Carson Wentz. They know that the team around him needs to play better as well. But in order to be the long-term solution at quarterback for this team, you're going to need to be able to lift the team and put the team on your back and win those important games. And the Colts just didn't do that with Carson Wentz under center. So I think that was number one. That was one of the big reasons that really turned off Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard on Carson Wentz being the future of this team.
Yeah, Tim Milliken says the sting of Andrew Luck walking away continues. It does. It's unbelievable, and I don't think it's going to change next year. I think we're going to go into a 7th year with a 7th quarterback. I really do. We're turning into the Cleveland Browns here in a much more winning fashion than the Cleveland Browns have done it over the years. I agree. Didn't step up. I think the vaccination issue is just, kind of ties into the leadership issue in my eyes, and we don't need to get into a vax non-vax conversation. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I mean, we were one of the least vaccinated teams in the league. I think if your I think if your quarterback steps up and says, "Hey, like, you know, even if it's not what he believes in, and he just says, "Hey, this is what's best for the team, and I'm being told this is what's best for me too." You know what? I'm just going to put some outside trust in other people because that's what I hope my team's going to do. He didn't. I don't know if did that article from Kiefer elaborate a little more on the leadership issues as well, or is he just thumping about the vaccine as well?
So when we talk about the vaccine, it really stuck with Jim Irsay that Carson Wentz did not get vaccinated, and whether you feel like that should make a difference or not is besides the point.
Right.
What Jim Irsay's thought on it was that because Carson Wentz didn't get vaccinated, he wasn't doing all that he could to help this team win. He, by not getting vaccinated, plain and simple, Carson Wentz was putting himself at risk of missing games and possibly
Yeah.
hurting his team, and by not being out there. And that really stuck with Jim Irsay that he didn't go. And Jim Irsay said this after the season that we're going to go all in. We want warriors, guys that will do whatever it takes to win. That was at Carson Wentz, and that was at some of the other guys that didn't get vaccinated. They wanted these guys to really go all in and put the team first, and that's part of it. Another part when we talk about the leadership issues. Now, I want to preface this by the Colts don't think that Carson Wentz is necessarily a bad leader or a bad locker room guy, but it just seems like from a leadership standpoint, he didn't take control like Andrew Luck did, like Phillip Rivers and even Jacoby Brissett did. It almost seemed like his leadership style was more like he was just along for the ride rather than kind of leading these guys into battle. And not, you don't not necessarily have to be a rah guy,
Yeah.
but you still want to have that leadership capacity and that leadership ability that when you talk, the other players listen, the other players respect you. And they just didn't get that from Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz a lot of times would stay in the background, not necessarily be that leader to rally the team. And that really stuck with the team. That stuck with the not only the front office and with Jim Irsay, but some of the coaches as well, just kind of seeing that. And that's kind of what they want out of their quarterback. They want somebody that rallies the team. They want somebody that the team looks to in tough situations, and that just wasn't Carson Wentz, and that had a big effect on their thinking whether they could stick with this guy as their locker room leader long term. And if you're just going to have a guy that's sitting in the background and that's not what you want, then it's probably time to move on.
What about this next point in here, Andrew, that you've got? Reich apologized to Irsay. What are we talking about when we're talking about that?
So this is something that Kiefer talked about in his article today. And if you haven't read it from The Athletic, fantastic piece. I definitely urge you to go do that. So he did put in there that after the season was over, Frank Reich went to Jim Irsay and apologized for the trade, for pushing so hard to get Carson Wentz and apologizing that it didn't work out and that he could not elevate Carson Wentz into what he thought he could. And that's big. That's a big thing, not only for Frank Reich to do, but it just kind of shows that even Frank Reich, who I would say publicly is one of Carson Wentz's biggest supporters, not only on the Colts, but just in the NFL in general.
I hadn't heard that yet, and I'm honestly shocked to hear him say that after just one season, as opposed to Jim. I know it was a rough year, but I just can't elevate him like I thought I could. And he recognizes that after just 1 year as well. I mean, honestly, you gotta, kind of take your hat off to Frank in that situation.
It's just so important in the evaluation process. If the guy that's going to be working hand in hand with the starting quarterback is saying that and admitting that's a big red flag. And I think when we're talking about it, that Carson Wentz was just now traded and that maybe that they were going back and forth, I'm honestly kind of getting the feeling that right after the season was over, they knew that Carson Wentz wasn't going to be here in 2022. They just said that they were evaluating it because they didn't know if they were going to be trading him or just releasing him outright. But I think
Yeah.
this has been
We'll
the
never know.
decision. This has been the known decision for a while within that Colts brass that they were moving on from Carson Wentz after 2021. And then we'll get to the kind of the final point behind the scenes that we can let you guys in on is that Carson Wentz, when he knew that his future was shaky with with the Colts and the franchise, he reached out to Jim Irsay to have a meeting to kind of clear the air. And at first, Irsay denied that. He denied meeting with Carson Wentz, and it came out that he was out of town. And later they did speak, but for him to just flat out at first deny the meeting and not even want to kind of talk about it again speaks volumes about this team really had moved on from Carson Wentz. And it wasn't
And just how pissed off Jim was. Like that silly little
right.
video next to the airplane, we knew he was upset, but this I think shows, because it goes against what I view as Jim Irsay character. Like that's not the way I would expect him to react.
Right. And the thing is like it kind of shows that before the season was even over, I think they had an inclination, and it wasn't just pointed directly at those final two games. I think those final two games did seal it for them as far as moving on, but it's just a culmination of the leadership and everything in the locker room, him not getting vaccinated all season. It led up to his release, and that was just kind of the icing on the cake. And I want to show this by Stats Matt, because I think it's important. He said he's talking about Rashad McGinnis of the Blue Stable in their Twitter spaces today, said that several players were not a fan of how Wentz handled everything off the field leadership wise, and he knows particular players, but obviously won't single them out. Yeah. So there was some torn people in the locker room of not being the biggest fan of Wentz's leadership ability, and it again, it's better to cut bait now. And if you know he's not going to be the future, there's no need of saying, well, let's give it one more year. The Colts did the right thing. This is kind of what me and you have been talking about in our episodes the past few weeks leading up to this. It was time to cut bait, and the writing was on the wall that Carson Wentz was going to be playing elsewhere in 2022.
I mean, how do you feel about the decision overall? I mean, I know you say it's the right thing, but did you personally, would you have liked to have seen Carson Wentz have another season?
I think knowing what I do now, no, because I don't think it would have gotten any better, especially if players in the locker room, obviously we're not in the locker room, so we don't see the leadership things, and that's come out now. I don't think it would have changed. I think the Colts probably would have regressed, and why regress and be stuck with a quarterback that's not going to be your long-term solution. So knowing what I do now, I don't think the Colts should. I think the Colts did the right thing by cutting bait and moving on. If you ask me at the end of the season, I'd probably still be up in the air of whether I wanted Carson to come back or not.
So where do the Colts go from here? Free agent options, draft options. A lot of names on Twitter getting thrown around. Thank God the Russell Wilson stuff solved and the Aaron Rodgers stuff. We'll get to that. You all know about it. This happened, yesterday. This is not news. But thank goodness it's over. But this Jimmy G name keeps getting thrown around, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of that.
So I wrote a piece, I think it was last week on Garoppolo's fit with the Colts, and I think he would be able to work in Frank Reich's offense a little bit better than Carson Wentz, but I don't think the ceiling is necessarily that high. I still don't think he would be able to get the Colts over the top. Now, there have been rumblings from credible sources that the Colts are interested and will make a legit proposition and look into trading for Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll see if that happens. From what
one of the, as you would say, one of the best, put it in quotes because you're just not very impressed with Kyle Shanahan. I feel like one of the best offensive minds in the league is dying to get rid of that guy.
I don't know if he's dying to get rid of him.
Isn't he?
I don't know if he's
What did they give up to go get Trey Lance?
Okay. They gave up a lot, but I don't think they are dying to get rid of him. They've really talked about how Jimmy Garoppolo meant a lot to that locker room, and you could see it after the game. Both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the GM for the 49ers, they've talked glowingly and both publicly and privately about Jimmy Garoppolo. Not only how much he means to the team, but he is the leader he is. And you got to remember, we're talking about the Indianapolis Colts here, a team that may put leadership ability and how they are as a teammate higher than most, if not all, teams in the NFL. That's really something that the Colts value, and that's why I could see Jimmy Garoppolo being such a valued candidate to be the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Do I think it's the right move? Maybe for the right price. Everything's for the right price. I don't want the Colts to give up a future first or even a second round pick. If maybe the Colts could snag Jimmy G for a third round pick, which they probably won't be able to do, then sure, take a flyer on Garoppolo for a year.
Do you think it's more likely that we trade for Jimmy G, or we wait and hope they cut him?
Oh, they're not going to cut him. There's going to be a trade market out there, because the Colts aren't the only ones looking for a quarterback. The Carolina Panthers are. Seattle now is. I mean, they probably wouldn't trade him in the division, but you got Pittsburgh, the New Orleans Saints are out there. Sure. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's plenty of teams out there that need a quarterback. So there's going to be a market for Garoppolo. But as far as
Matt says, that's the only issue he has. The reports about Jimmy G to the Colts is all about how they value his off-field way more than the on-field. And I think he's just another Jacoby Brissett.
See, I think he's better than Jacoby. I mean, not.
He'll throw it down the field, but he'll just miss the throw. So at least he takes the shot. He just doesn't land the ball.
I would say Jimmy G is an upgrade from Carson Wentz. So if you want to put Carson Wentz in that 20 to 18 to 20 range, I would probably put Jimmy G at that 14 to 16 range as far as quarterback.
Are we moving on?
Well,
Marcus Mariota.
Marcus Mariota is another name that I've been hearing that the Colts could target. And this one wouldn't cost them anything besides actual money. And honestly, if I had to choose between the two at this point, I would choose Mariota, because he's going to come cheap. He's probably going to come for about $10 million a year. Not bad for a starting quarterback, but he's going to come cheap. You could probably sign him to a 1-year deal. And the Colts were interested in Marcus Mariota last year. Before the Wentz deal came about, they had inquired to the Raiders about Marcus Mariota's availability. So I think he would open some things up in the Frank Reich offense. Would he be able to lead him to a Super Bowl? Probably not, but Mariota would be a bridge option. And then I think if it was me, you sign Mariota and then you possibly make a run at a rookie quarterback.
I don't hate Marcus Mariota very much. But honestly, and I don't think anything would be preventing this yet, right? But I don't hate the Trubisky idea. The more I think about it, the more and more I like it. And most of that, and people are like, I got a little flack last night, I think, in my mentions. Most of the reason for that is because of my absolute mistrust and lack of confidence in Matt Nagy. Honestly, I mean, it all stems from that. I truly don't think that dude is worth a shit. So it makes me wonder, what could Trubisky have been? Do I like him a little more because he's a North Carolina Tar Heel? Maybe, but I like his legs. And I think with the right coach, I think Trubisky has potential to be good. Do I think he's the long-term solution? Probably not, but he's a low-cost solution for next year that if he turns into a long-term solution, great. If not, oh well.
Yeah, and I don't mind the Trubisky option at all. I think Trubisky's market is definitely more than Marcus Mariota. So I think if you're looking at Trubisky, you're probably looking at 15 to 20 million a year area. And there's multiple teams. I mean, especially coming out of the combine, a lot of people were talking about Mitch Trubisky being a hot name amongst teams like the Saints and maybe even the Giants with Daniel Jones, the Steelers. Like Trubisky, he's getting some some publicity here, and teams are really starting to think that Trubisky could
Dude,
help.
that preseason game, him wrecking the Chicago Bears, the most important preseason game anybody's ever played.
So Trubisky very well is going to have a market once free agency starts, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a starting quarterback next year.
All right, Andrew, I don't know a single thing about a single quarterback in this year's draft. Not a one. I don't know the first name of any of these guys you have listed. So you go ahead and you tell me what are some draft options. I know you're hearing rumblings that the Colts like some guys.
So from people that I know, this is who the Colts really like in this draft. It's Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh, Matt Corral out of Ole Miss, and Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. Those are the three quarterbacks that the Colts are very high, or not, I wouldn't say very high on, but they really like those quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett, I don't think will drop to the Colts. I think that Pickett will probably be picked within the first 20 picks of the draft. I do think that the Colts, if they really like a quarterback, there's a very good chance they will use some of that draft capital that they received for trading Carson Wentz and use it to get into the bottom of that first round to draft a quarterback, so that way they can have that fifth-year option for that quarterback if they really like it. But two guys that could fall into those 20s, definitely Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder is a guy that I could see even falling to the second round, where the Colts might not necessarily need to do that, but they could still want to just hop into the bottom half of that the bottom of that first round to snag him to get that fifth-year option. He's a very athletic guy. He shows great leadership. He did very well with the interview process, and it's a guy that I think could really fit within the Frank Reich offense. A little bit raw, definitely would need to sit a little bit and develop, but he's got potential. And then there's Matt Corral, which a lot of people think is the third best quarterback in this draft class behind Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. He didn't perform at the combine because he is still rehabbing and trying to get 100% healthy from his ankle injury that he suffered in the bowl game. But he's a guy that he's got a pretty good arm. He can really rip it in there. He shows good accuracy, and he's a guy that really has mobility to him. So both of the guys that I think are the most likely that the Colts could draft in Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder. That's why I'm kind of thinking that Mariota could be an option, because both those guys are more on the Mariota side of things as far as their skill set and what they do best, rather than Jimmy G, who's a guy that really makes his moves from the pocket, kind of stands in there, has that quick release. The other guys are more athletic, can do a little ad-libbing, make things happen with their legs as far and as well as down the field, things like that. So, but Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, and Desmond Ridder, three names to watch if you're a Colts fan and want to watch some film on some college quarterbacks.
All right, Andrew, let's start talking about the Colts free agency this year. It's looking like about $72 million in cap space, which should be fine. And do we know we don't know the cap for next year yet, even, do we?
$208 million.
Okay.
They announced that last week.
So plenty of room. Positions of need, obviously, besides quarterback, and talk about some options. Left tackle, Andrew, probably number one, along with edge rush, but probably left tackle overall. Couple of big names in free agency got tagged. Orlando Brown's a guy that we were kind of craving last year. The guy down in Jacksonville. What do you think options realistically are at left tackle and through free agency?
Through free agency, there's really not a lot. I mean, as far as the big name guys, there's Terron Armstead from the Saints, but he's going to command top money, and I really don't think the Colts are going to go top money with their left tackle, at least right now, because you already have so much money in Ryan Kelly, in Braden Smith, and Quentin Nelson's going to get his extension after this, or should be sometime this summer. So really, the Colts don't want to have half their cap into their offensive line. A guy that I could definitely see the Colts bringing back, though, and who I really want them to bring back, Matt Pryor. I would love to have Matt Pryor. He played excellent last year in filling in for Eric Fisher and Braden Smith when they were injured. I would really like to see the Colts give Matt Pryor a chance to start at left tackle. I mean, and can continue to build on what he did in 2021. So maybe go Matt Pryor and then draft a guy and have them kind of compete for that starting spot. I think that's probably the most likely scenario you see from the Colts. But there's guys like maybe if the Colts can get Dwayne Brown, the left tackle out of Seattle. He's older. He's 36 years old, but maybe if they could get him for a year or two, he's still plenty good of a player, still Pro Bowl level player. But if they get someone like that, maybe that can extend it a year or two. Still sign Pryor as a swing tackle, but maybe kind of go that route as well if you don't want to necessarily go with the rookie route.
I like the Pryor idea. Because honestly, he did well, I think, with some competition from the draft. I really do think that's where we end up getting a left tackle is in the draft, because the best names out there, the ones that are worth spending money on, are tagged or not great options. So I don't mind building up Pryor. I thought he did really well on a short off season, or not having the off season as that guy. So yeah, I'd be interested in that. Another position, wide receiver. Now this is somewhere where a lot of people want, and a lot of people think we could make a splash. If I recall, I don't think this is where you think we make a splash in free agency.
I really don't. I mean, if they could always blow me away and try to sign a bigger name, but the reason I don't think the Colts will necessarily make a huge splash in free agency at wide receiver is just because this draft class coming up is so loaded with wide receivers. You can get a great starting wide receiver in day 2 or day 3 of this draft in the 2nd or 3rd round. So I could see the Colts bypassing that and spending elsewhere and really just kind of focusing on the draft to get a wide receiver. Now, if they do, you could look at guys like maybe a DJ Shark from out of Jacksonville, who was really starting to come on before he got injured. I think he would be a great fit with Michael Pittman Jr. Christian Kirk, someone like him, who's a guy that has shown flashes in Arizona, but's been behind DeAndre Hopkins, now AJ Green and Rondale Moore. Maybe he could get his shot. So those are a couple of guys that I really like in this wide receiver class. But I honestly, I'm not sure if the Colts do make a splash there, just because of how deep this draft is. I think the Colts would be able to make a good draft pick of a wide receiver and really be able to spend their money on big name players at different positions.
It would have to be quite the fit. I think that $28 extra million we just picked up could help, and maybe we make a splash there if there's somebody they really like. But then the next position, Andrew, edge rush, pass rusher. We need somebody to go get that QB. Our defense didn't work well enough without that threat. I don't think it's going to be any different with Gus Bradley if we don't have that threat. So I imagine that's where we're going to go big. Who are some guys on your short list that you wouldn't mind seeing?
Yeah, so real quick before we move on, we've got a comment from Eric here that says Allen Robinson is a must. Allen Robinson intrigues me. I think he will he's pretty good. I think he will get pretty big money. I know the Patriots have been reported that they're going to be looking hard at Allen Robinson, but he's coming off a down year, and the Colts were interested in possibly acquiring Allen Robinson here in the past couple years. So
Chandler Jones, I'd be about.
We'll just see how the money works out for Robinson. But as far as the edge rusher is concerned, I think this is probably the position the Colts are most likely to spend big money at. And that's not to say anything against Kwity Paye and Dio Odangbo, but what's one thing that you always hear Chris Ballard say? You can never have enough pass rushers. The Colts would love to have 8 to 9 guys that can really produce. Every team would love that, but
for the whole line,
But the way they do that, so that way they can rotate 4 out, put 4 in, and keep the guys fresh, but still consistently pressure the quarterback. Right. So I could really see the Colts making a splash signing here. My number one for me, I mean, you mentioned Chandler Jones, and I think Chandler Jones would be a beast. But number one for me is Hassan Riddick from the Carolina Panthers, a guy that didn't start out fast in his career, but now has had back-to-back double-digit sack seasons, and he's only 27. So he's a guy that's a little undersized, would be very good at that Leo spot. If you put him at the Leo on some plays, and if you want to put Kwity Paye as the other end, put Dio Adangbo inside, man, that with DeForest Buckner, that would be a very scary pass rush. Something that's interesting about Hassan Reddick, I tweeted out when it came out that the Panthers weren't going to necessarily re-sign him. I'd say I'd give 4 years, $56 million for Hassan Reddick, about $14 million. And you know me, I don't normally like to spend big money. Really like Hassan Reddick. I think it was a couple hours later, it said that Hassan Reddick was looking for about $15 million per year. My contract would have been about 14. So hey, if you Colts going to go up to about 60 million, go for it. I think Hassan Reddick could be a really, really big help to this team. Another guy that might be a little bit under the radar is Emmanuel Ogbah from the Miami Dolphins. I think he would fit really well. But I saw a comment here from the chat that said Melvin Ingram from Liam here. Melvin Ingram, it could be one of those signings where maybe the Colts do it because Melvin Ingram has experience in Gus Bradley's system and is familiar with that. So name to keep an eye on, but I do think edge, the Colts are going to spend some money at that position.
So, and to bring Eric up again here, and honestly, Stats Matt is the one that put it this way, but people are talking about Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner plays the same position as Darius Leonard. People forget. Okay. That's one of the, and no offense to you, Eric, pal, but that's just one of those names out there that sounds like, you know, every Colts fan clamoring over every big name in free agency. I'm good with Darius Leonard. I think I'm happy with that.
I'm good with Darius Leonard. The Colts really like Bobby Okereke. And Bobby Wagner is not going to be cheap. He is still an all-pro level linebacker. He's going to require all-pro level money. The Colts aren't going to pay 2 off-ball linebackers $100 million. That's just a bad way to build a team.
Tight end, Andrew, are there any names out there that would intrigue you there? Rob Gronkowski?
Gronk's out there. Gronk's a free agent. I don't see Gronk coming to the Indianapolis Colts, but
I wouldn't boo Gronk. I'd have booed Brady. I wouldn't boo Gronk.
See, I think the Colts could spend some money at tight end because typically tight ends don't cost as much as wide receivers, but you can still get a quality player and you can use them like a wide receiver. So, and we know the Colts aren't opposed to spending money on tight ends. They spent money on Eric Ebron and went out and got him. So guys that I really like, I mean, I've talked about this guy for probably a month now, Hayden Hurst. I think Hayden Hurst has a lot of untapped potential. I think he's still a young guy.
Didn't he have the most touchdowns out of any tight end 2 years ago?
I don't think
Lamar's MVP year.
I thought that was Mark Andrews.
It was Mark Andrews. You're right.
But the thing is, Hayden Hurst was a first round pick, and he's always been behind one of the best tight ends in the league. So he's in Baltimore for all those years, and he's behind Mark Andrews. And so he was used situationally, but wasn't the number one guy. Then he comes to Atlanta and starts getting more run, and you see him starting to ascend. That they draft Kyle Pitts, and then Kyle Pitts becomes the number one guy. So I think Hayden Hurst really has potential, especially in a Colts offense where you can put him, use him as a deep threat down the seam. I think he has a lot of potential to be a very good tight end in a Frank Reich offense. And then another guy is OJ Howard. OJ Howard's another guy that I think has talent. He's just been behind other tight ends. Rob Gronkowski, very athletic. Cameron Brate. So OJ Howard's going to be hitting the market. And I think OJ Howard would probably be maybe a little bit more expensive than Hayden Hurst, but I still think the Colts could take a chance on one of those guys. Both of them are, I think, 26, 27, 28 years old, still fairly young. You can give them a 2 to 3 year deal, see what happens, and see if they bring an explosive element to this Colts offense. And then finally, the guy that probably seems most likely is Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz had a big year. Yeah. He's a good blocker. He's a guy that knows Frank Reich's offense. I think Zach Ertz has a very good chance of possibly going to the Colts.
I can't help but wonder if that wasn't a fluke season. You know, he goes over there late, and then, you know, nobody really knows what to expect from him from a defensive standpoint. You know, how do you plan for him? And Kingsbury, you know, had a lot of fun with him. I don't know that Zach Ertz is going to be productive.
I don't know if he is either. And honestly, I'd probably go with Hayden Hurst or OJ Howard over Zach Ertz myself. But I think as far as the Colts, with their familiarity with Zach Ertz, especially with Frank Reich, I think there's probably a better chance Zach Ertz goes to the Colts than the other two.
Interesting name. He probably will still be a Bengal, I agree, but Uzamoa flashed a little bit this season. I even picked him up on my fantasy team at one point. It was like one of those, I was behind the curve on him, so that didn't work out for me, but yeah. And then cornerback. Who's out there at cornerback? JC Horn? Did I hear that name? Am I crazy there?
Yeah, I think you hear J.C. Jackson.
JC Jackson, not JC Horn. Holy shit. Yeah.
J.C. Horn's the rookie on the Panthers, but J.C. Jackson's out there. J.C. Jackson's going to be requiring a lot of money. I don't think the Colts will do that. I think the Colts are very happy with Rocky Sinton's development. They've got Kenny Moore, obviously, and then Isaiah Rodgers. I think you will see the Colts make some moves for some depth at the cornerback position. And a guy that sticks out right away is a guy that's been in Gus Bradley's system for years, and it's Casey Hayward. Casey Hayward's a long cornerback. Yeah. He was with Gus Bradley with the Chargers as well as the Raiders. I really think that the Colts, if they do sign some cornerbacks, it'll be more cornerback depth and more veteran guys that can push those young guys for playing time, because the Colts do have a need there, because Xavier Rhodes isn't going to be back. TJ Carey isn't going to be back. The Colts did sign Marvell Tell, but you still want to have more competition. And again, cornerback.
Are there any names out there attached to Gus Bradley or any of the other defensive staff that are possibilities?
As far as, I'm not sure about the big names. I know Casey Hayward is one of the bigger names. I did see something where the Colts could possibly be in and looking at Rasul Douglas, the cornerback who came onto the Packers last year and had a really big time season when he was acquired. He's another long corner that gets a lot of turnovers, puts an emphasis on going for the ball. So I would say the top two that would be Casey Hayward and Rasul Douglas.
Matt's asking about safety. Feels like more three safety looks might come in Bradley's system. Probably, but I think they're very, very, very confident in their top two. They had a couple of guys flash this season, and show that at least they could be third string corner or safety. So I don't know that that's going to be a top priority in free agency. I'm not saying we don't sign anybody, but
I definitely think it's a possibility, just because of how much three safety looks the Colts are probably going to use. And I definitely think the Colts will probably target somebody in the draft as well, just because Julian Blackmon is coming off that Achilles. So, it's probably going to take some time for him to get back to full strength. Khari Willis is probably going to have a more physical load this year, because if the Colts are playing a lot of single high safety, Khari Willis is going to be more in the box. Yeah. And Khari Willis has had some injury issues as well. So the Colts definitely, I think they realized last year, when you're starting games with Andrew Sendejo and George Odom, you need to invest a little bit more in your depth at the safety position. But I do think that those could be some of the under the radar signings, like the Colts usually make one or two every year, like a Matt Pryor, like a Chris Reed, like a TJ Carey was in 2020, things like that.
All right. Let's move on to the sad news. Let's move on to some other Colts news. After 9 seasons, 295 catches, 2,729 yards, 24 touchdowns, and a shit ton of times making me and Andrew say WWJD. Jack Doyle has announced his retirement. Congratulations to him. Sad to see him go. Great teammate, great tight end. He'll never even hear a whisper of Hall of Fame, and I don't necessarily. He's not that good, but great tight end for this team. Workhorse, great blocker, and about as reliable as he can be.
Absolutely. Jack Doyle is just the epitome of a hard worker, and showing that it doesn't matter what your draft status is. It doesn't matter how highly you're recruited. You work your ass off and you really put everything towards your craft. there's a spot for you in the NFL. I mean, he went from being undrafted to being a Pro Bowl tight end for the Colts, playing 9 seasons and being the starter for the majority of them. So
Yep.
Jack Doyle, I think my favorite moment of Jack Doyle, one is the WWJD, the entire locker room using that as what would Jack do. But then also just him always being that security blanket for Andrew Luck and for the quarterbacks that were with the Colts throughout these years. I mean, every third down, Jack Doyle, if it's 3rd and 9, Jack Doyle would run 10, get a little curl and catch the ball and fall down. Seemed like he made so many of those catches. And so many times when a quarterback was in trouble, Jack Doyle would always be there and you could rely on him to do whatever was needed. So love Jack Doyle. He's going to be one of my top 10 favorite Colts players of all time for sure. And hell of a career for a guy that wasn't even supposed to be here.
Yeah. I think I'll remember the beard.
Awesome beard.
Fantastic beard. One of the best beards in football. And yeah, like I was gonna talk about the security blanket thing for Andrew Luck, just being reliable, always, all of a sudden, just always open in the middle when he needed to be. I think I'll never forget seeing Jack Doyle wide open and Jacoby Brissett just missing him every time. Like, at one time, I'm at the stadium just screaming, "Jack's open, you dumbass!" And like, just that moment, like just seeing Jack go across the field and me screaming, is one I think I'll remember forever. Not necessarily a great memory, but just like, that's where he always is. You can always count on him to be there. And Jacoby was just not on that level. Real quick, yeah, when's free agency officially start?
I think the tampering period starts Monday, the legal tampering period. So next week, we're right around the corner.
We didn't even talk about players that might leave the Colts in free agency, but you know what? Tomato, tomato. We're running out of time. So moving on from Jack, Colts are not expected to re-sign Eric Fisher per Adam Schefter. That's fine.
Yeah, and I'm not too sad about this, if I'm being honest with you. I think Eric Fisher, again, kind of like Carson Wentz, one and done. I know the Colts were working with Eric Fisher to bring him back, but it sounds like Eric Fisher either wanted more money or more years than the Colts were willing to give, probably because of how he performed in 2021. So, I mean, I think this just makes it even more important, though, that the Colts put an effort forth to bring Matt Pryor back, at least have somebody in place that they can trust in case the draft doesn't fall their way and they're not able to acquire the left tackle that they want in the draft. So I do think this definitely helps Matt Pryor and his chances of returning to the Colts.
Did you see your boy Zach's quote tweet today? He had made some comment about this news and
said that he was done with the Colts.
Somebody else quoted, "Oh my God, I'm so done with the Colts." And Zach says, "Yeah, not re-signing a bad left tackle is just the last straw." I was rolling laughing. I was dying laughing at that one.
Good tweet.
I can't wait to have him on and confront him. We'll have to have him on during this draft stuff, since I know very little, even less than last year. Somehow. Having a job is a bummer, I mean, I am not used to the working world anymore. Colts are in talks with Tyquan Lewis on a possible return. Andrew likes this. He tweeted this. What's up?
I do like this. I think if he can be a prove it deal, because I think Tyquan Lewis does have a spot on this defensive line. He can play inside, he can play outside. He wasn't playing too bad last year when he got injured. So I think if a cheap prove it deal for Tyquan Lewis, I think would be good for the Colts.
All right, and the Colts signed cornerback Tony Brown. Everybody knows Tony Brown.
Tony Brown. Ever heard of him?
Never heard.
Tony Brown's a guy that was with the Bengals and with the Raiders. So again, spent time with Gus Bradley. Really didn't make too big of an impact. He was just on the practice squad. So kind of for depth. Possibly we'll see if he makes some noise in camp.
All right, let's move around to our second podcast, news around the league. The Packers and quarterback Aaron Rodgers agreed to a 4-year, $200 million deal with $153 million guaranteed.
So that was the original. That was the report by Ian Rappaport.
Right,
So,
and he refuted this, yes, on Twitter today.
yes. So when it came out, Pat McAfee, who broke the news, congrats, Pat, with your source of Aaron Rodgers. And but he said it wasn't accurate, and then Aaron Rodgers came out and said it wasn't accurate. But as of right now, that's kind of the figure. It's going to be probably around that 4 years, $200 million. That's kind of the sense of where it's going to be. We'll see when the final numbers do come out what it actually is. But main thing is Aaron Rodgers is going to be back with the Packers for the foreseeable future.
Andrew Luck is going to be buried 6 feet under one day, and Colts fans are still going to be making this joke. I mean, Andrew Luck's going to be in a nursing home, and people are going to say Andrew Luck.
If you saw Andrew Luck at the college national championship game,
he's not in football shape.
The man his playing weight was 240. He's 6'4", and probably looks about 180. I would say he has lost all of his playing weight, has grown a phenomenal mustache, by the way.
Which is ironic because the entire time he's in the NFL, he's just bashed for his facial hair.
Just has a terrible neck beard. Now he has a very Frenchman-looking mustache. But yeah, Andrew Luck is not returning to football.
Can we move on from Aaron Rodgers? I'm so sick of talking about
it. You won't have to talk about him.
I love Aaron Rodgers, but I'm just like, we're going to be having this conversation again next year. He just signed a whatever. The Seahawks have traded quarterback Russell Wilson, not to the Colts, and
we wish,
along with a 4th-round pick to the Denver Broncos for quarterback Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, defensive lineman Shelby Harris, 2 first-round picks, including the 9th overall, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick. I mean, get out of town. That's unbelievable.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of people. And listen, just to recap, if you thought there was a chance of Russell Wilson coming to Indianapolis and you're one of those people tweeting at Jim or say pissing and moaning, go fuck yourself. Because, I mean, Russell Wilson was never coming to Indianapolis. Andrew's going to yell at me for that later. Andrew's going to yell at me for that one later. But I mean it. I mean, get out of town. You don't deserve to pay attention to the offseason. Just watch this 17 games and shut up.
Russell Wilson was never coming to the Colts because he had to waive his no trade clause in order to go anywhere. And he only wanted to go to Denver. Denver was his top choice. And honestly, that's not surprising considering what he wants, the team that Denver has, and everything like that. So, yeah, the Denver Broncos sure gave up a lot. The Colts wouldn't have even if Russell Wilson was considering coming to Indianapolis, the Colts did not have anything like that to offer because the Colts weren't giving up Darius Leonard, weren't giving up Quentin Nelson, anything like that. They didn't have the 9th overall pick, which the Seahawks want because they're probably going to use that to draft a quarterback. If I would presume.
Jacob Eason, Andrew. Jacob Eason's going to get a shot.
Jacob Eason, the savior of the Seattle Seahawks.
Washington alum.
Man, that dude. All right. So that AFC West now has Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr.
And we're about to have Jimmy Garoppolo.
And guess who plays the AFC West in 2022? The Indianapolis Colts.
Same team that does every other year.
We will face all 4 of those quarterbacks next year.
I don't give a shit.
And the Colts will face Carson Wentz at Lucas Oil Stadium next year because the Commanders play Indy.
Now that I enjoy, and I'm going to go ahead and claim that ticket now. That's the game I'm going to. Mark me down. This has got to be the dumbest. You know how I've been doing this is the dumbest tweet I'll see all week tweet. This is the dumbest thing I'll see this entire offseason.
You have to have a sound for this on the soundboard.
I'm going to come up with the dumbest tweet of the week, but my God, Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley suspended for the entire 2022 season for betting on games. What an idiot. How stupid can you be? Do it on your cousin's account. Don't do it at all because you make $11 million a year. And this guy's doing what? A total of $1,500 in bets? He bet $1,500, lost $11 million. This dude's a stooge.
The ultimate bad beat. Can you name a worse bad beat?
Yeah. I mean, 3 years straight without hitting a big parlay in the NFL? Pretty rough. I still wouldn't have made $11 million.
Man, Calvin Ridley. I mean, this dude, it's just dumb. Just a dumb move. There's really nothing else.
And also, don't be the guy that takes his shit in the porta potties.
Calvin Ridley shits in porta potties. You know? I mean, come on. I can't stand it. I'm so pissed off.
Oh man,
I don't even care. I didn't like the Falcons. I mean, what an idiot.
And he was going to have he wanted to be traded, was going to have a chance to go to probably a good team because he's a damn good wide receiver. And
maybe the Colts.
Now we'll have to wait for 2023.
All right. Can't stand it. Franchise tags. What's up, Toby Zubia? Franchise tags. Bengals franchise tag safety Jesse Bates. Browns get tight end David Njoku. There's another tight end that could have been a good fit. Bucks and Chris Godwin. That poor guy needs paid. Chiefs, and this is one of the tackles we're talking about, Orlando Brown Jr. They tag left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. We're not getting our hands on him. Cowboys tight end Dalton Schultz. Dolphins tight end Mike Gesicki. Another one that that guy, that'd have been sweet.
He's a great player. Great player.
Sweet deal. Jaguars offensive tackle Cam Robinson was another name rattled around. And Packers tag Devontae Adams. Not really surprised there. And he might actually, because Aaron's staying, he might not even sit out.
I think really the only one that surprises me is Cam Robinson, because the Jaguars hold the number 1 pick, and there's some very good left tackles in this draft. And now Cam Robinson, who's a guy that has underperformed and has not been a very good left tackle, now gets the franchise tag for the second year, and they're going to now pay him like $16 million when I don't think he's worth that at all. So Jaguars are going to Jaguar. And I see what's going on in the chat here.
Tim, dude, come on.
I
was just thinking about making a joke and saying a random ridiculous name, and that was better than any joke I could have made. Chargers and wide receiver Mike Williams agree on a 3-year, $60 million mega deal that includes $40 million guaranteed, $28 million in 1 year. So we would have had to have paid one Carson Wentz for 1 year with Mike Williams.
Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are now being paid $44 million combined by the Chargers a year. That's a lot of money on your wide receivers. But hey, Justin Herbert keeps him his weapons.
They could give Sam a chance. We're not going to win a lot of football games, I don't think.
Sam Ehlinger is the quarterback for the Colts in 2022.
Hey, listen, Marcus Mariota or Trubisky in the backfield at the same time as Sam Ehlinger a lot.
I mean, I don't know if you would want to do that when you have Jonathan Taylor. Put Jonathan Taylor in the backfield.
I don't mean like as a running back. I'm just saying two guys back there. You never know what they're going to do. Move it along. Okay. Titans sign linebacker. Go back to the beginning of the show and pay attention to quarterback talk if you missed it. Okay. Watch it 5 times. Tell your friends to watch it 6. Titans signed linebacker Harold Landry to a 5-year, $87.5 million extension with $52.5 million guaranteed. Wow.
Harold Landry, very good pass rusher coming on the last couple seasons. And I was a fan of the Colts possibly taking away a nice pass rusher from the Titans, but that's a big deal for Harold Landry. So good for him.
Cowboys are likely to release wide receiver Amari Cooper, according to Andrew, by the start of the, I love calling out your typos, Cooper, by the start of the new league year per league sources. Cowboys will try to trade him, but will release him if no deal materializes. Now that is a name I could get down with. He's still pretty young.
He's pretty young. He's going to be very expensive. And I even with the Colts having all that cap space, I don't think that Amari Cooper is going to be their top option. I could be wrong. Maybe Chris Ballard changes his whole approach and goes buck wild. But,
I think he fits. I think he fits the the
Locker room?
personality, locker
Culture?
room,
Mhm.
culture,
I definitely think so.
work ethic. I think he's one of those guys. Panthers are listening to trade offers for running back Christian McCaffrey. Would consider dealing him for a single first-round pick. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, but would you give up a first-round pick for Christian McCaffrey, a guy that's missed, I think, 22 of the last 33 games due to injury?
We shouldn't, but I think other teams should. Yeah.
I don't know about that. I would
Rams.
never trade a first-round pick for a running back, but that's just me.
Yeah, but he's more than a running back.
I mean, when he's out there,
I know, but I don't know. Have you checked out that offensive line lately?
The best
Not great.
ability
Not
is availability.
Move it along. There's teams that should want to go get him. Rams linebacker Von Miller hints at a return to Broncos on social media. Why would he do that? Because of Russ?
This was before
That's
Russ.
messed up.
This was before Russ,
That's
but I mean, now it wouldn't be such a bad idea, would it? Going back and playing on the
another Super Bowl.
The Broncos. I mean, it could happen
2 in a row. There's no way that's ever happened before. Somebody won a Super Bowl with one team, went and wins a Super Bowl with another team, and then goes back to their original team and wins a Super Bowl. It'd have to be a Patriot.
It'd have to be someone like that
went to the Giants. I don't know. And beat their original team in the suit. Seahawks released linebacker Bobby Wagner. We talked about that. Bills give wide receiver Cole Beasley permission to seek a trade. Permission granted. Please do not sign Cole Beasley.
Let's talk about Bobby Wagner, though. I mean, it's pretty crazy that the Seahawks, in a span of like 8 hours, just released their two biggest, the two faces of their franchise. So we'll see.
All right, and we're not talking about Cole Beasley. Patriots released linebacker Kyle Van Noy. This poor guy can't catch a break.
Kyle Van Noy, I feel like he's been on the Patriots multiple times and they just cut him after like every other season, and he still keeps going back. It's like that
I click on that
X that will always. I think you did.
It was an accident.
That X that always takes you back is Kyle Van Noy.
Yeah. Ravens offensive tackle Alejandro Villanueva announces his retirement. Didn't he just sign there this past year?
I think he
hilarious.
did. Yeah,
they signed him. They gave him a deal.
He was with the Steelers for a few years, and then the Ravens picked him up to be their one of their tackles after when they traded Orlando Brown.
NFL and NFLPA agree to suspend all joint COVID-19 protocols effective immediately.
You'll love to see it. No more testing, no more masks, just football.
All right. The NFL informed teams that the 2022 salary cap will be $208.2 million up to $25.7 million from 2021 up 25.7. Hold on. Back to the World War III's coming. COVID just disappears.
Funny how that is, isn't it?
It's all Putin. Now I'm going to get bombed. Salary cap increased. There you go. That's news. Do you need to comment on that?
Nope. Let's move to the last one.
Amazon is expected to finalize a deal with ESPN's Kirk Herbstreit to be the main analyst for Thursday Night Football.
I like Kirk Herbstreit as an analyst.
Handsome son of a bitch.
Now, who is going to be so he'll be the analyst, but who's going to be the play-by-play? Al Michaels?
Pat McAfee?
It's not going to be Pat.
I know.
That would be an analyst, but Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, I could get behind that duo.
That'd be wild.
Because I think Al Michaels is leaving NBC.
Joe Buck?
I think if Joe Buck leaves,
he's going to ESPN.
ESPN with his boy Troy.
I didn't know that. I did not know Fox didn't offer Aikman an extension. That's fun. Okay. That's it. Go follow us. Tell your friends, tell your family. Go follow us at a Colts podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And again, please, I'm not going to beg you because I'm not a beggar. I'm telling you, I'm ordering you. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell your grandpa. My grandpa would watch if he, knew how. He'd probably watch. Tell your grandpa. See what they say. Exciting things happen today. Exciting things are going to come. But until then, Andrew, go Colts.
Smoke screen season is here.
Smoke
Go Colts.
season!
Let this moment become a cherished memory. And then remember, a legacy is only worthwhile when there is a future to fuel. God bless you, and God bless football.